I'm now carrying on with these pieces, the textural work and the York scene. Bev will be up here later, and tomorrow I'm taking Bev over to Beverly. So Beverly to Beverly, but with an additional E in the word. So for Eden song, which will be rather nice for her. But she's only got 3 days here after all. I thought you had a little bit more, but in 3 days we can only do so much, can't we? So hopefully we'll get well into these, depending on drying this one off. I've got to use the hairdryer at the moment to try and get it dry, and that's the problem, because I can paint and work very quickly once that's set. I've got to put the primer on yet. So anyway, it's now 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm just trying to dry it off so I can... Right, well that's that one done, and Beverly's just arrived, so she's seeing the end of it, but she saw the beginning and it'll be on film anyway for her to see later. We're going to go and look at the film we made yesterday now, and I'm waiting for the textural piece to dry still, nothing I can do there. So in the meantime, with time going as it is, what I might do is stretch a bit of watercolour paper. In fact I've got some card ready, some watercolour card. We might sketch out to do a watercolour, which means that we've done acrylics, the textural and pastels and watercolour then, which would be quite fun, won't it? What do you think?
I think it's, I'm just blown away by how you do it. with the roller. I do have several questions. Like when you put the white in down here and all while I was gone, did you do that with the roller or the brush?
No, I would have liked to have done a bit more texture with the roller, but I've actually, for the sake of things, finished everything off with the brush.
Okay.
I've done no roller since I did the underpainting. I could go back and put some texturing over. I'd be tempted, in fact, to put a bit of light blue, if anything, but I think the painting just works as it is, so I'm not going to.
Okay. Yeah, you know, I'm asking you questions because I'm just trying to...
Oh no, it's totally up to you. If you feel it needs it, you can work backwards and forwards as you want. I mean, you can go backwards and forwards and use the roller and then use the brush and then use the roller as you want.
Yeah, okay. Well, you know, just some real basic questions, like, I know how...
Okay, I've just worked out a drawing for another watercolour, and in this case I want to really play with masking fluid a lot. We're going to play with masking fluid, especially on these textures around here, the little white houses here, the edge of the water, and all of this weed and texturing of the grasses here. A lot of that's going to be masking fluid, so I'm going to paint all of that in first with masking fluid, then paint my water in, or totally all around it, then come back and go over this masking fluid with the oranges so that they're nice and bright and clean and orange. This areas and these areas I want to do with brush work, wet into wet, wet next to wet, wet and dry, and dry brush especially over here. We'll actually probably start with the sky itself though, which is a lovely luminous blue. I'm going to do a watercolour now then of this Scottish scene. It's all the way back in fact from Western Scotland. And as Bev's just been saying about planning a watercolour out, watercolour especially is one that you do. It's like a battle, an army. You work out how your battle plan is from the very beginning, where your lights are going to be, where your darks are going to be. You have to know that for even the techniques, because you have to know where you're going to put your dry brush, where you're going to put wet into wet. And in this case where I'm going to use masking fluid to start with. So let's go into more detail. I'll just show you the drawing now. We're going to be doing this painting here, this photograph, because I went out put it in, you see. It's all planning ahead. Right, well the other textural piece is still drying off and I've masked this up. The masking fluid is now dry. My back has just suddenly gone on me again, which has really thrown things out. I've got a lot to do. So I'm going to struggle through this. Anyway, we'll do the sky first. Wet into wet. Nice soft fluffy sky, so clean water all the way across. Or fairly clean water. Right the way through here. Up to the horizon line there. And we're going to use, as I say, a lot of masking fluid with this one. Slight waxy finish at the start here, till the paper gets going. There we go. And watercolour is so much to do, we've got this horrible mark here which is a pity, but it's so much to do with timing. You can teach anybody to do acrylics or oils, but watercolour is something that has to come with feel and experience. So although I can give you the basics, you'd still need the experience to use them, and it needs time to loosen up as well. Okay, we'll start with our lighter colours. I'm going to take a little bit of very light aureolin yellow here just to start with and put that cooler yellow. So I'm starting again, as with all watercolours, I'm starting from my lightest colour going to my darkest. I want a cool yellow at first in there, then I want to go warmer, so I'm going to go to my raw sienna and drop a bit of that in there. And it's flowing downwards because I've got my paper at a slight tilt and I want that downward flow. Right, now I want to go slightly warmer, and for that I'm going to use one of my favourite colours that you well know, the one that you can't make, and that's this beautiful cobalt violet. And I'm just tickling it in, so I'm just going to pick up that colour and drop it in below the clouds here, fairly heavily, right down below. And remember that it's going to dry lighter, and hopefully when I get the other washes in, remember this is called a wash, and this is a graduated wash, because it goes from one colour to another. The pencil lines, people say, well, do you take your pencil lines away? Well, they do tend to just disappear, so let's not worry about them too much. Right, I'm going to go to slightly stronger, warmer blue now, which is my cerulean. And you'll see just how different that is, and of course the cerulean now is going to start making this look, the turquoise, look more turquoise. So we get our nice fluffy soft edges. I want to go warmer still, take a little bit of ultramarine. In fact, I forgot to put my ultramarine out. I've got to put some ultramarine out in a minute. Just drop in a bit of the ultramarine above this, just to pick out this slightly warmer colour so that the cerulean really does look cerulean. Those clouds now a little bit warmer, so I'm going to take some of the ultramarine and a little touch of purple in a moment. If I can find my purple, here we are. Not too strong, but I've got to start dropping in these deeper tones here underneath the clouds now. Underneath the clouds mainly. Right along those edges. Up and through here. So go a fraction warmer in just a moment with this. We'll let little bits of it just come down into the sky there. A little bit warmer still. A little touch now of burnt sienna and ultramarine, which gives me a lovely grey warm. To go a bit darker to these edges, a bit more blue into that. You can control it as you go along this way. And again, I'll just soften those in. Right, a little bit more purple, remembering that, as I say, this is going to dry slightly lighter than I painted it on, so I'm not going to fear too much. So I'm looking at this, I'm going to take a little bit of cadmium yellow, a wee touch of orange if I get it clean enough, because it's pretty filthy on my palette. I do want clean colour now, and I've got some mucky greens in there. Let's see if I can get a slightly stronger yellow. Just test it first, and it's still mucky. I do want a slightly stronger yellow coming in here now. Just in places. So I've got my cool yellows, and now I'm getting some slightly warmer yellows in. So we can let that dry off, and I think I'm about there for that. Happy enough with that. Just a little bit more strength of colour into some of these areas. There we are. We get little bits of accident that we can control, that's good. Right, now the painting should be fairly rapid. A bit of water just dribble down there, I'll take off. Always have some tissue handy to lift paint or clean up. Now I want to start doing glazes down here, so I've got to put washes on first, and to do that I'm going to start with, normally I use aureolin yellow, but this is lemon yellow. It's more opaque. I thought I was going to use lemon gold, yellow gold, but I'm not going to. Bring that right down through here. In fact, I'll take this wash of the lemon yellow, and I'm going to go on to aureolin yellow now because I want more transparency right up to here. I'll take this right across the whole of this. Cadmium orange. Drop that in here. Beverly's busy making notes, but every painting is different, so although she'll get notes on this one, I might not help her in the future. Now a little bit of the cobalt violet, beautiful colour. Start dropping that in, and I'm just letting the paint do the work. We're using controlled accident. So you can see I'm just letting paint drop down in here at the moment, getting these lovely soft effects of the way the light is shining through here across the moors. Oh, so I'm already getting a feeling of distance. The sky is now dry, which is good, so I can start to work up a bit darker up there. Now, this is where the control comes in, because I'm going to start dropping colours into this, and I have to get these colours just at the right timing, or they'll spread too far. Let's start with a little bit of that lovely purple we were using earlier. Just a touch of it, not too much, I don't want it too strong. And I just want to bring in some shadow coming across here. Now if I just tickle it in, I could glaze it, but this is a wash at the moment, it's a graduated wash. I just want to get these soft effects. Now I come down to these trees, and the trees, again I can start with my stronger colours, so I'm going to take the green again and drop in these little bits of green, and this is why I love using these oval mops. It's my favourite brush of all, because I can go fat or thin either way and get these lovely effects. And you see the paint getting drier here, so I'm getting harder edges already. So I'm getting wet against dry, which gives me a harder edge. And put the cobalt blue into this up here and let that start to do these lovely light pine tree green blues without getting hard edged. Now the cools into here as well, and this is still wet, but it's just dry enough for me to drop carefully a bit of paint in here and there just to get the feeling of distance. Right, and into that again we go with the darkers again, but not too quickly. So I'm going down to stronger blue now. I'm going to take some of my ultramarine. This is a much warmer, stronger blue. And start to drop in up here with that. You can see now where it's dry, and I put these harder bits of paint or drier against, wet against dry here to give those sharper edges that are higher up. We'll let that dry down. We're leaving those lights behind. We can bring those lights down a bit more yet if we need to later with a bit more colour, but that's okay. Right, let's look at the water here while we're waiting. Now with water, I tend to advise that you paint the verticals first and those horizontals afterwards. Not quite so easy with watercolour because some of the horizontals want to be with dry brush in the beginning, but if we can paint in the reflections first, the depth of the water first, and then do the lighter colours, it tends to work better. Oranges for a start. It usually is the case that, and we'll drop a bit more orange into here as well, that water tends to be either a lighter tone or a darker tone. It's never the same tone exactly, which is rather strange, but hardly ever do you get water that is the same tone as what it is reflecting. Now I want to, before I get to the darks in here, which are going to be stronger, I want to get the softer darks into there. So I'm going to go back to my ultramarine and sienna, which is a lovely colour to use, as it does granulate as well, which is nice, especially on a rough paper like this, so we should get some granulation going on here in a moment. Let's just first of all drop along here, all the way along this edge. I'm going to use the tip of the brush to flick across, getting a bit of dry brush work as well as the reflections into here. Really start to drop in these much darker colours through here. A little bit warmer, a little bit more burnt sienna in that. And we're just letting that flick into here to get the effect of the ripples that will soften out, and also the, while it's still wet into wet, also the little bits of reflection that are along here. Just using the tip to flick out. My students had a bad night's rest, just yawning again, so I know I'm boring her. Coming down to here, and this is where my weed starts. This is where I finish with the masking of the seaweed, but I've actually stopped here with the masking because I'm going to bring in my seaweed with the brush. So I'm using both the masking and, that's a bit warmer there, that comes right through to here. Watercolour needs to be fresh. You've got to put it on and leave it alone. Don't mess about with it. So we'll let the rest dry off because I want to do dry brush work over that and some stronger, sharper lines. Let's start working now these weeds out down here before we go back to the trees. We're almost ready to go back to the trees down there, but I want to get the soft effects here, and I want here this very strong, beautifully strong cadmium orange all the way down into here, right through this bit here. I just want to bring some of that blue down into here. Let it come into, blend into those to get this furry effect, which is rather fun. Let the watercolour do the work for you. Right, coming up back into that, a little bit of paint on my brush, not too much, and we'll just drop in some bits of, although I'm going to do this later with the masking, I'm just going to drop in a few bits of the orange in between here. I'm going to get warmer as I come into it with roses in a minute. So look at these lovely wet and wet effects we get, which will give us the feeling of this. And I'll do some texturing across here later with the texturing brushes, but I don't need to do that quite yet. Most of the rest there we can do with texturing. While I'm at it, I'll just keep going for the moment. I'm going to put a wash of some greens and yellows down here. Again, I'm going to let my paint flood. I've already got masking fluid down there, so I know I've got some lighter textures that I can bring out already. I shall drop colours into this, so I'm putting wet on dry, but in a minute I'm going to come back and put wet next to the wet as well. So we're leaving our lights behind. This is completely different to the way we painted pastel yesterday, where we put darks and mid-tones on and then we came back and put the lights back in again. Here we're putting our darks around the lights. You can add more brown or more blue to make these shadows, these darker trees, warmer or cooler. So that was burnt sienna and ultramarine. And I'm just painting an impression. I'm certainly not trying to get every single tree correct effects. Any way to get them, but these brushes, you can use fan brushes for this too. There's all sorts of ways, brushes we can use. Hakes are very good for this sort of thing too, but it will just spread out a fraction afterwards. But I want to use a textural brush there, so I'm not going to do that quite yet. Okay, I'm just going to lift out some colour here now because we've got these lovely lights of the water coming through here. What I want to do is wet this area here and literally lift the paint off again with the brush and lift out paint afterwards with the horizontals. So you can see the lovely effects we can get with that. Okay, that's dry enough now to start to work on again, and we're going to want to start to work some textural effects before I take off the masking fluid. Bring my picture back to work from. I want first of all to work up some of these darks on top of the ripples. That's what we can do with that. A little bit of rose into my... We'll just see if we can drag across. I want it fairly wet for this. Not fairly. I could use a single brush, but I'm going to just use at the moment a rake just to get some of these nice ripples that are going back into the distance here. Quite effective, isn't it? And don't forget, you can get these rakes in various textures, from fine to... Right, so that's enough of that. I'll go back to my mop, make up a similar colour of the ultramarine, a little bit of rose, a bit of dry brush just across there maybe. Don't want to lose my sparkle there. And some of it going down through here as well. You just drag. So before I move the masking fluid, I'm going to come down to here, and I just want to work on these grasses and things. And I'm going to use my hake. Hake's a beautiful brush for textural work. It allows me to do lovely grasses and things, as you can see here. I can paint large with it, I can paint small with it. Ron Ransom, as I say, was one that really loved the hake, and he could do an entire painting with a hake and just a rigger. Let that dry down a bit. While I'm waiting, I should come back on these, bake some rose and start to do the bits of weed and darks with the rose on here. Link it one into another there like that. Masking fluids, so still got to come off there. To go back to my orange and cadmium orange and just drop some of that in with it as well, so I get a more opaque feeling of the lovely rich effects we can get with watercolour. The people forget, they think watercolour has got to be so delicate and so fine that now is the worrying part. Will the masking fluid come off? Oops, as he kicks the camera again. So it makes a bit of a mess of it, but eventually it will come up as alright, I hope. Brush skills are important, how you hold your brush, how you work the brush. But also the timing is so important, isn't it, in this, the way that you have to wait just the right time to drop colours in. Make the cool seem cooler with a little bit of burnt sienna now here. And there we are, we'll call that one finished. Okay, this textural piece is now dry enough to put a coat on. I was going to do both black and white, but I've decided to go just for the black. And Beverly's giving me a helping hand here, and we're going to totally coat this. And it's important to get right down into all of the textures. Not only does it help to hold the textures on, but we don't want any whites. So that's the piece painted, and we've got to get it dry now before we can start doing the textures onto it, doing the painting onto it.